Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Tonight, someone dares to try polyamory and it leads her to eventually sexually molest the air particles, while you also receive the background story on the child-hating tendencies of the dinosaur man. Welcome to the Flick Club. I'm Karri. My colleague is
And
Henrik.
I'm Henrik. And this is, once again, return back to the digital hell, which is the modern-day film podcasting.
Yeah. Everybody has a mic. Everybody has something to say.
Yeah, yes, and listeners have viewing recommendations, which usually gets taken care of like 1 year later in our with our backlog of films.
Yeah, in this case, it took a little bit longer. It's our friend from Mint Volcano, Mr. Nick Vacky, who recommended this movie on, let me see.
Let's not check out how old this recommendation is.
23rd of October 2023.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
In our defense, we did note the recommendation when it came through to us, but at the same time, like, you know, that the film backlogs that we have already kind of decided, or at least had been thinking about, were a thing of their own.
Yeah, so we did think about this from day one, and it took this long to materialize to an episode. One reason being that, wow, the subject matter. I watched this movie a long time ago already, and we were supposed to do the episode, but then we were like, oh, maybe, Henrik, we would like to postpone a little bit. And now, when the moment of truth already came sometime last year, Henrik, now we really gotta do Possession. We gotta finish this beast. We already did some background work. So we just have to do it now. So when put against the wall, well, we did what any normal person does, and we delayed it once more. And
yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. But also, on that note, we have been suffering from technical difficulties, at least on my end. And there also was the Christmas/New Year's break hiatus, which we take semi-religiously.
Yeah.
So there were also like other factors in the case of covering Possession. It was not just that we were kind of afraid of touching this movie.
Yeah, well, so Possession, a 1981 film from Andrzej Żuławski. Henrik, do you want to go with like a background on the movie? We can do it together.
Well, seeing how we are touching upon pretty much, I would say today's film is very much your territory. Based on the fact that this is almost like tailor-made for you.
Uh-huh.
There is your old point, like how emotions are semi-pointless, and how love, for example, is chemical reactions in brain.
True.
When put it in most simplistic forms. Well, here is a film that very much agrees with you, and seeing remembering some of your past points or opinions when it comes to Christianity, church, organized religion. Well, also is covered that Possession being quite hard on religion, and also seeing that, remembering like when we started the podcast and some of our earliest episodes, that was back in the days when you were still living in Poland. So Polish film had somewhat noticeable presentation in our episodes back in those days. So now we are also kind of coming back to one of your favorite territories with a Polish movie. So in that sense, well, it's like 3 strikes for you, man. This is kind of like bound to be a certified hit with you, Kari. There's just no other possibility.
Right. So well, let's give a short overview of Andrzej Żuławski. Let's not spend the whole day on this guy because there's so much to talk about the movie already. But he's a filmmaker, born in 1940s, born in Lviv. Spent most of his time in Poland and Warsaw, and is known as a filmmaker and screenwriter, as a novelist. But for this kind of intense and surreal and, shall we say, even emotionally unhinged films, or films that at least have a certain kind of style that come with them, because for one, we know that Andrzej Żuławski really digged this Polish way of acting that became popular in the 20th century, this kind of over-describing, over-pronouncing your emotions on screen, but for an interesting reason, because well, it goes basically like this, that we internalize a lot of our feelings. We keep the feelings inside of ourselves. Even if we are angry, we don't really manifest everything externally all the time, whereas this acting style is kind of exactly that. You are externalizing everything, so that's good, that kind of the focus. And also to have movement in everything, we can tell that Żuławski loves to have the movement in the frame, basically needless moving and poking around by the actors, by the characters, also in possession. So that's Żuławski basically, but there's of course a lot more that you could cover. You could cover quickly the fact that he was making a movie in Poland, didn't get to finish that one, therefore was effectively banned from filmmaking in Poland and the Eastern Bloc, and thereafter he got the opportunity through his producer contacts in France to do movies in France. So he went to France, did a bunch of movies there, but has collaborated with a lot of different producers and directors from around the world. So yeah, one of those, and actually the first product that came as part of this France adventure was Possession.
Yeah, and adventure and France is kind of a big point when it comes to talking about possession, and perhaps some of the themes that you can see in the film. Because the movie that you were alluding to previously on the Silver Globe, like you pointed out, it was a film that was in production. It was 80% ready.
Yeah.
And shot when Polish government came up and shut down the whole production based on the fact that they felt that the film was too anti-establishment and too anti-communist party, and that was the reason why On the Silver Globe was shut down. It was later, like, it got released years later. It 7 years after Possession, On the Silver Globe finally got released, if I remember correctly. It was. And on the Silver Globe, if I remember correctly, it was meant to be the third film, and then the production got halted, and due to that, it like the release of the movie was postponed in a way that today it's something like 9th film in Żuławski's filmography. But following like the cancellation of On the Silver Globe, back when that cancellation happened and the production was halted, Żuławski was, to put it mildly, somewhat discouraged by the treatment he got from the government officials, which partly perhaps may fuel into his opinions when it comes to like the Soviet regime, which can be seen through some lens in Possession, and which most definitely can be seen in Żuławski's interviews, where he's quite critical of the communist establishment and, well, governmental establishment altogether, and also his colleagues that he feels have kind of stayed true or have agreed to play the ball with governments and governmental establishments. And I would say that perhaps in all of those reactions we can kind of see one type of a reaction and one type of a grudge that Żuławski would have could have developed based on how On the Silver Globe was originally treated. Also, Żuławski's move into outside of the Soviet bloc. I am first to France, and from there on, it was also somewhat of a tricky process. As far as I've come to understand the story, the Soviet regime and the Polish authorities weren't really happy or ready to let Żuławski get out of Poland. They didn't want the man to be making any movies, but they also didn't want to see him leave. And if I remember the story correctly, they granted Żuławski something of a temporary visa to kind of, for the moment, to travel outside of Poland. And that was kind of like Żuławski took that and then extended it.
Yeah, and possession is also related. It's, well, I don't know if we can say autobiographical, but it definitely includes elements from real-life events where Żuławski was just now in the midst of breakup, a divorce, a bitter divorce. That's like a key theme of the movie, Possession. And also, you know, he was now moving from the Eastern Bloc to so-called Free France, so he was able to do more liberally whatever he wanted on the screen. And so he was kind of estranged and divorcing also from his Eastern Bloc life, so it's a double divorce in a sense.
Divorce is kind of, I would say, a correct term to use here when it comes to Żuławski and his Eastern Bloc. Because as far as I've come to understand the story, following the government halting the production of On the Silver Globe, he was also forced to leave Poland. So it wasn't like him coming to France. It wasn't really. It was more of a mandatory process that Żuławski faced than any kind of a willingly attempted artistic move.
And all of these themes show up in Possession, and it definitely is to an extent it's like a film about trauma. We can go into these separate sections of what individually to discuss about the themes of the movie once you're ready for that.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, so in preparation I read, two books specifically touching themes closely with the Possession film. There was one from Esther Perel called The State of Affairs, which is about, it's about infidelity. It's about infidelity and why people betray their partner. What's the reason for that, and where does it lead emotionally on both of the people's parts, and if there is any way to reach like a new stage for the relationship afterwards, or is it just going to end? And it also always depends, of course, on the individual cases. And the other book that I read was The Berlin Wall by Frederick Taylor. Kind of like a very good overview and one of the most lauded books about the Berlin Wall divide from 1961 to 1989 and beyond. So Perel, on her part, in her book, she discusses the idea that infidelity, it's not only about the loss of love, but it's a loss of self. This would nicely align with Anna's inability here she's unable to identify with either side. Loss of love, loss of self. We already kind of touched on Żuławski and the fact that it's kind of semi-autobiographical, if you will, in regards to the end of marriage. So the movie is inspired by the divorce from the wife and divorce from the country. And then you consider something like that he had grown up in the Eastern Bloc, having been born in Lviv and had a lot of his career in Warsaw. Then he gets the opportunity to do movies in the West. We have this movie, and I would say that that's really about the disillusionment and the contradictions that he feels about where he grew up and towards the whole promise of marriage, if any. Perhaps there are even elements of misogynistic approaches here, but not necessarily. I will not want to go and entertain that train of thought much further. I don't think it's very worthwhile unless you disagree.
I don't know. I would actually like to hear your point on misogyny at play in Possession.
I didn't use a lot of time on thinking this through, other than that fact that the character of Anna is displayed very much as somebody who is constantly doing the wrong moves, may feel bad about it, but has this swingy attitude about what she's doing. She can't quite decide which side she belongs to. And then making her to have sex with an alien character or some kind of a creature, and whatever, we can later discuss what the hell that actually means, but maybe it makes her look like she's in a kind of a bad light as a woman, and take off that what you will.
In a way, yeah. I can understand and understand the point. Then again, when it comes to kind of watching Possession and trying to judge like who the film tries to put the blame on here, I don't know if there is a clear-cut case of like one side bad, one side good.
Yeah.
In either one of the two, Mark and Anna. Like, obviously, of course, it's kind of easy seeing how Żuławski comes to this film from a breakup with his own wife. And like you mentioned, the film being at least partly autobiographical to a point where, well, if we are to take Żuławski's word about how the breakup went, there are like entire scenes lifted from his own process. There was some interview, I don't exactly remember what article it was that I read in preparation, but it made the notion that, for example, the moment when in the film Mark comes home and he finds out that Anna has been gone from the apartment for quite some time, leaving the kid alone, and the kid is covered in jam. That apparently is something that Żuławski himself faced when he was going through his own divorce. So in that sense, yes, the film is at least partly autobiographical, and in that sense, it would be kind of easy reading with the film to come into a conclusion that since that Żuławski is just like portraying his own feelings from the breakup, and since he is the guy with the camera and he is hurting, the film would come into a conclusion that Mark is right and Anna is wrong here. But at the same time, like, this film is surprisingly hard on Mark also, and vice versa. Anna is not just a complete home-wrecking monster in this case.
No.
If we take the film's title, Possession, to account, in one way, Anna's actions throughout the movie can be argued that, well, she is being possessed, and in that sense, Anna can't actually be held accountable for her actions.
So, that's kind of one of the discussions to be had. The title possession.
Uh-huh.
Does it refer to possession as in some kind of somebody being under some kind of a spell?
Or does it mean possession as in someone is or something is being possessed or belongs to someone?
Right.
That's a good question, and I would say that yes, and yes.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling from the film that is actually something that Żuławski does knowingly. Like, he knows what he's doing when he uses the term possession. In many ways, Anna's behavior in possession lines very well with like a semi-realistic depiction of some type of like a demonic possession. Anna goes through a lot of tropes that you see in possession cinema here. There is somewhat erratic and hysterical behavior, something that she tries to mask under the guise of normalcy, and then all of a sudden, like, all these weird things just kind of burst through her mask. In that sense, like, she at times she is reacting kind of like, for example, how Regan behaved in The Exorcist. Attempts at normalcy, but there's a power that's just too controlling and too strong, so, she can't hide it. And with that, for example, there is the famous U-Bahn tunnel scene, which is something that later on has been repeated and alluded back to, or paid homage by other possession films. The latest one which comes to my mind being the Omen prequel. Was it the first Omen? What was it? However, the latest movie in the Omen franchise, where also like a woman giving birth to Damien, going through one form of a demonic possession, and that scene plays homage to Anna here in the U-Bahn tunnel scene.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, we can kind of see that Anna is being demonically possessed, or being possessed by some type of a weird alien Star-Lord god or something else.
Yeah, although I don't think it's anything like that the movie wants to communicate. And, well, we can discuss about that in more detail shortly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to check, the film's Polish title, although the English title, I think, comes as the first title to be given to this movie, this international movie. But I just checked that the Polish title of Opętanie can be a reference to demonic or supernatural possession, as well as like emotional or obsessive kind of possession. So it works there as well.
Yeah, which is also something that we see in this film. Because Mark's behavior, and I want to point out that as the movie goes on, I do start to feel that we see Mark putting up more of an honest and fair attempt to fix their relationship. Like, as the film goes on, Mark starts to behave in a way that, to me, telegraphed that Mark was actually more serious, that he actually loves Anna and wants to repair the relationship, due to love. And this way, his attempts to repairing the relationship can be seen as somewhat pure. But at the same time, and especially in the first third of the film, when it comes to how Mark behaves, his behavior is possessive. And Mark uses language like Anna shouldn't break up with him because it's not proper.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable behavior. Anna is behaving irrationally and hysterically, and she's not behaving like would be expected by Mark.
Yeah.
And in that sense, yeah, you can say that that the title also alludes into like Mark trying to possess Anna as an object. And if we also take more political reading into the film, if we would take the stance that Mark and Anna are some type of metaphors for political ideologies and nations, since this happens in 80s Germany, which was divided into West and East, and the political aspect is very much strong in the film's story. Mark's work he's some type of a undefined spy to the West Germany or some type of American institution. Mark's employer is never actually explained entirely who or what it is, but he does some type of spy work for the more capitalistic leaning side of Berlin. And Anna, on the other hand, the apartment is like right next to the Berlin Wall, so it's like the most eastern part that you can have without actually physically going to East Germany. So in that sense, we can kind of say that Mark here presents West and capitalism, and Anna could be a proxy for East and communism. And in that sense, we can also, if we would take that reading, and if we would think Anna and Mark as metaphors for political ideologies, in that sense, we can also see that Anna and Mark's breakup, it's a clash. It's a violent clash between two different ideologies, and we can also see that we could see a metaphor for nations and ideologies trying to possess the subjects, their subjects. In other words, people living in those countries or supporting those ideologies.
Okay, yeah, that's a good catch. On my part, I see both Anna and Mark quite heavily to be of the Eastern type, in a way, but not only. But Anna is here somebody who I see as a political metaphor, someone who is suffering in the hands of the Eastern Germany, East Berlin, Stasi, whatever you want to picture. She's someone who is completely tired of the same old. It never changes here. She wants to experience something different, and therefore comes over this sort of a spell, wants to commit infidelity, and at the same time, Mark is kind of the Stasi around the corner. He's constantly asking from Anna, where are you going? What are you gonna do? And I will check on that, whether you're gonna go to your friends, and a huge fight breaks out over that. Check. And that's all what Mark is doing for most of the running time, completely obsessed about knowing every move and what is happening with Heinrich. And yeah, this is something that happens in broken relationships as well. Most likely you become obsessed to know, at least initially, what's going on with this new guy and her. But it's not only that, because later in the movie, Mark kind of loses her interest in following her and her every move all the time. But also, when we got even closer to the end, we can see that Mark is interested in covering the tracks of Anna, all the murders, and therefore wants to become the co-conspirator of Anna. So the flame is still there at the end. What that means in the East-West split in political sense, not sure, but I don't think we need to follow that train of thought so rigorously all the way through.
I don't know. I in a way we have to follow East-West train of thought throughout the film. I don't know if we have to be so rigorously that we have to take it into every single scene, or Mark's behavior change when it comes to him kind of flip-flopping on how much he actually is interested in what Anna is doing and how much he's not.
Yeah. But like, how is the backdrop of East and West Berlin relevant to the film? I guess we could like try to cover that a little more. Like, obviously, it serves as kind of this supporting background noise for the central themes of the film, and it kind of reflects both of their emotions. Anna's emotions, she's having this internal tug of war, and she's stuck between these two worlds, doesn't really know what she should do. This goes back and forth and returns to the apartment, and then goes back to Heinrich and has these explosive phone calls. Having difficulty to let go, essentially, but does kind of let go eventually, but then also not. So, well, actually, she's going back and forth throughout the movie. But that's like a fitting allegory towards the Eastern Berliners crossing the border to the West. It's like a reflection of what Żuławski could have gone through in his head. It's a good allegory for some of the soldiers who started crossing the border. When was it? Like 1964. There was famously one of these soldiers who was photographed and jumped over the border. I don't know if he was necessarily the first one, but there were like hundreds in the following weeks and months that crossed the border. Unfortunately, this famous jumper also killed himself in the in the 90s, after the Berlin Wall had already been taken down. That soldier was Konrad Schumann, who killed himself in 1998. It seemed that he had trouble rekindling the relationships with his parents, with the people who had been in the eastern side. So, in a sense, I guess, suffering from this invisible wall effect, the wall of the mind, even after the actual physical barrier had been removed. So people had trouble readjusting their relationships. So that's kind of a sad story. But so, how is the backdrop of the movie East and West Berlin? How is it relevant to the film?
Well, in preparation, well, I found for this article from Chris Lambert from Film Colossus, who sources a snippet from the director's commentary version of the movie, and he quotes the director saying, "I thought about this film in Poland, in Warsaw, and I thought that the story of a woman possessed, a woman not living in the reality of the communist times and regime and surroundings, but having a very strange affair, would be very well concentrated with what was going on in our Eastern European countries at the time. But I've made 2 films in Poland before, and the second film, The Devil, was arrested, was imprisoned by the authorities, and stayed in this purgatory, in this hell, in this prison for films for 18 years. So I was thrown out of Poland. They gave me a passport, and I went abroad. I went west, and I tried to find in my mind a place in which the circumstances of what I had thought for the film would be telling and moving and graphic. And I thought that Berlin, this divided city, so I thought that Berlin was the best location I could imagine. The city between East and West, the city of divided hearts, divided lives."
Yeah.
So in that sense, yeah, I would say that well, the East-West divide, when it comes to kind of like the symbolical themes and allegories of the movie, and I would go as far as to say that the film is an allegory. But when it comes to that allegory, I would say that the East-West divide, and also the divide between communism and capitalism is in the heart of possession.
Yeah, like exactly, like during the Berlin Wall, the people of Berlin, especially in the East, they had these economic hardships and lack of governmental trust. They struggled with their identity. So I see that Anna's character reflects these hopes and aspirations that they have on the eastern side. These people who want to escape the monotony, the grey, and pursue some kind of alternate self. And in this case, we have the relationship, or this kind of alternate universe, play some other character. Here it kind of manifests itself in the form of Monster Mark then in the end. This is the ideal iteration of Mark. And I definitely see that is kind of at least the ideal vision of what would await on the other side. So Żuławski may not be completely positive about either side of the fence.
No, Żuławski seems to be, well, I don't know if I can say hostile, but at least extremely critical of both sides of the conflict. Kind of the feeling that I got from the film, and well, it kind of harkens back into, well, the whole point of Possession having this doppelganger storyline.
Yeah.
And in Germanic folklore, I don't know certain where doppelganger as a theme originates from. It's a theme that has been used basically every folklore and stories all over the world. So it's hard to source where the concept comes from. But the version that I've heard from, it's basically old Germanic folklore. And at least in those stories and in that folklore, doppelganger usually is seen as an omen of destruction and death. There's been the idea that if you face your own doppelganger, that somehow means something bad to you, oftentimes death. And Possession is a movie that deals with doppelgangers. Both Mark and Anna has a doppelganger in this movie. For Anna, it's the new character Helen, who at times works like she's a completely fresh-faced new person into the situation between Mark and Anna, and at other times she talks almost like she would have some type of an insight or hindsight into what is going on between Mark and Anna. So in that sense, she is kind of a one type of a mirror image to Anna, and in one way, like you mentioned, Mark, the alien monster Mark at the end of a film can be kind of seen as some type of a optimal or idealized version of the real Mark. And in the same way, Helen can be seen as an idealized version of Anna.
Yeah.
And both of these characters, they kind of produce each other's downfalls. The whole shebang has already, like, we start the movie kind of in media res. The marriage is already falling apart. So we can kind of throw in the argument that before the film starts, had Mark stayed at home, had he not taken the undisclosed spy job, which took him away from home for undisclosed amount of time, well, in that case, perhaps anything that happens in the film wouldn't have happened. Most likely, Anna couldn't have had the chance to have a fling with Heinrich. Perhaps it would have been even gone as far as Anna never actually giving birth to a weird alien tentacle monster thing that then transforms into Monster Mark. So in this sense, we can kind of say that what happens in the story perhaps partly is also Mark's fault.
Yeah.
And Anna, on the other hand, most definitely kind of produces her own downfall by producing the alien monster Mark. And in that sense, kind of basically the doppelgangerism, it's kind of tied into basically Anna and Mark at the end of a film destroying each other, which is what happens at the stairway scene.
Yeah.
And then what we are left with is basically the monster mark.
Yeah.
And the film from there point onwards, Das is only using audio cues, but the way how I took the audio track and, their son eventually drowning himself in the bathtub, I took it as a reason that it's alluding into some type of a destruction of the of world, like World War III or nuclear war starting out or something like that. This type of a like almost apocalyptical event starting at the end of a film through monster mark.
Possibly drowning, but likely.
Yeah, likely drowning. I took it that the kid is dead.
Yeah.
Like that is the only reading I have when it comes to end of the film. Even though we are never actually given full disclosure on that. But in my headcanon, the kid dies. And in that sense, like if we took Mark and Anna as political metaphors, well then we would have like East and West, capitalism versus communism, both kind of being tied to each other through fate, both kind of producing each other's downfall by not budging, by not giving any ground to the other side, and basically the end result of that downfall and that conflict being some type of a World War III nuclear war scenario, basically the destruction of the world, simply because capitalism and communism just couldn't stop fighting.
Yeah, there's so many things that you said there that I'm just going to follow some kind of my own train of thought and try to throw things at you, and let's see what happens. Yeah, you said about Helen, and Helen is the sweet, kind of perfect version of Anna. Not truly so different. She's kind of like another iteration of what Mark wanted Anna to be. Idealized version. And I see that Anna is seeking to break free from this societal shackles, marital constraints. And she does constantly admit wrongdoing when she comes back to the apartment. So it's kind of interesting because this could be seen as if Anna would be a defector to the West, which would hold personal gains, promises, but then in the end, like it's as if she lets go of that against her will and then has to kind of replicate her past husband, and once that happens, then she reaches the other side, but the pain is too much to bear that she has to break up. And in the end, she decides to join her husband on the other side in the staircase scene, as we know. But yeah, I think that Anna seeks escape from Mark, but loses herself in the process and therefore suicides.
Yeah.
Because I view that both Anna and Mark are, as I said, like most of the time, I view them at least as East Berliners thematically. Mark refuses to see the faults in the relationship and then behaves overly jealously. Kind of like a monitor who obsesses about every move. Kind of like a surveillance state, and later seems less affected by this separation. What you have in the end, what you already kind of touched upon, the movie ends with what seems like some kind of war erupting between East and the West, which might be affected by the fact that Helen, who does look like Anna, and then the monster Mark, they meet. And tied to that, I was thinking that maybe one of the most interesting readings that could be made of this is the monster is kind of reflecting the Perel's book Inside, where she says, quote, "When we channel all our intimate needs into one person, we actually make the relationship more vulnerable," end quote. Well, this is not exactly what she was talking about, but nevertheless, we see that Anna is unable to channel part of her into friends. So instead, she is kind of channeling all of her energy, all of the roles that she needs from different persons. She channels them into Mark, or wants to channel them, but is unable to, so therefore break up. So Anna's desires can be viewed as too grand to be kind of satisfied by Mark alone. So then she switches into this new age guru Heinrich, and then, because that's not enough either, then she goes the other step beyond, to the beyond human. And even at the end, like, she's unable to reconcile that contradiction that she is leaving, and that leads to the both of those characters' death.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about on the same lines myself when I was listening you. I myself, I haven't read the Esther Perel's book, but like from the points that you raised from the book, yeah, if we for the moment, if we forget the whole political symbolism in Possession, if we just look at the relationship,
yeah,
in that sense, yeah, I would say that actually Mark very much is at fault in the breakup. Like you raised the point of Mark's possessive behavior, and that is really fair criticism to lump at Mark's feet. And from that point, yeah, what happens is kind of Mark's fault. We don't know much about Mark's and Anna's home life.
Yeah.
Kind of like before breakup. But most likely, like, the image that you kind of easily get from the film is that Mark is the man who does the work and brings home the money, and Anna is kind of more stay-at-home mom. So in that sense, like, Anna's freedom itself, freedom to live her life the way how she could perhaps prefer, it's quite limited. And in that sense, like, I'm not saying that cheating is okay and everybody should just go for it, but Anna having a fling with Heinrich is somewhat understandable if we start to suspect that, well, Anna is mostly tied to home and tied to being the mom. Heinrich can be seen as some type of attempt to have some type of a personal freedom and a sexual freedom. Especially since, like you point out, Mark is not at home to cover her needs, well, at all, not emotionally and not sexually. And this is something that also Helen points out in course of the film when she remarks that it's sad that to you freedom seems to mean evil. And what about lack of freedom, which is a question proposed directly at Mark. So in that sense, even Helen, which is kind of like the perfect idealized version of Anna, even she is questioning like exactly how much control Mark is trying to assert over Anna. And why is it that Mark perceives the concept of Anna having freedom automatically as negative and evil?
Yeah, Mark, at least, he doesn't give Anna any possibility to really explain herself insofar as she's interested in explaining her decision-making or lack thereof. But she's not allowed to breathe at the apartment because Mark is just asking, where did you go? What did you do? How dare you do that? This is exactly what you should not do when somebody is being perfidious or unfaithful towards you. Of course, there's a stage where Perel also talks about stages. There are different stages. There is the anger stage. Hopefully you get through that pretty quickly so you can start kind of resolving the situation or try to understand what's going on and why is the other person doing those things. Even if they are wrong, there's always some reason why that happens.
Yeah. Do give actually some defense also to poor Mark here. It is somewhat like you can kind of see why Mark, especially at the beginning of the film, he starts to mellow on towards the end on this regard, but But throughout the movie, it looks like Żuławski has also extremely critical view of love and relationships altogether.
Yeah.
Like following the original, originally following the breakup. At first, Mark loses his ability to almost even talk coherently, and there is that moment when Mark just locks himself up in a hotel room in some type of I don't know exactly how long drunken bender he's having.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of institution rather than a hotel.
Yeah. I took it that it's a hotel. In my opinion, it's a hotel. But like Mark at that point of the story, Mark, he starts to act like an alcoholic or a drug addict, and in that sense, there is kind of you can kind of also take the reading that Żuławski proposes that companionship is an addiction to us. Like, we need to have companionship. We don't have it. We may start to behave like Mark and start to become self-destructive. Self-destruction being something that repeatedly happens throughout the movie, especially with that electric kitchen knife thingy that they both use to mutilate themselves at different points of the movie. And from that point, we can kind of ask that, does the movie then proposes that there is no really pure or healthy love? Like, is our addiction to companionship, is it so strong that basically the whole concept of love kind of gets tainted by it? Certainly, yeah, love is good and it's sweet as long as you have it, but there's always this darker side. If you lose it, you may end up like Mark and Anna in this film, partly self-mutilating and partly self-medicating through alcohol or some other, well, better not overindulge in it type of substance.
Yeah, it's likely that the love that you once had or still have, it's now though gonna be contaminated forever. Because coming back to this one quote, infidelity is not just a loss of love, it's a loss of self. Because your identity is so strongly tied into the whole relationship, everything you do together, everything you've been for years and years and years, and then you realize that at some point, at least it has become a lie, and maybe nothing of this meant anything. So that part of your life has been completely tarnished, and you cannot trust your partner ever again.
Yeah, and in a way, this is also something that the film says to you in dialogue. There's the dialogue change of what's happening to us is just natural. Feelings change. And Mark retorts that without you, I wouldn't feel anything. So it's kind of, once again, like, it's a destruction of self. Something that also happens throughout the movie. Like, eventually, Mark and Anna get destroyed, and Mark's self at the very end gets, or both of their selves, Mark and Anna get replaced by their counterparts. For Anna, that is Helen, and for Mark, it is the monster Mark.
Yeah.
So also in that sense, we can kind of see that through that, as a result of their crumbling relationship, there is both the emotional and also the physical destruction of self for both Mark and Anna.
Yeah, and even if and when Anna chooses Mark in the end, so to speak, that choice by then, well, for multiple reasons, is meaningless now because everything has already been ruined. Like, the damage has already been done, and whatever you want to call it, and this corruption between them that has resulted in this monster Mark. Perhaps kind of like an allegory also to some sort of mental illness, which has been caused by the contradictions and the separations. For example, if we go back to the wall, in the sense of Berlin Wall, the contradictions and separations involving that. And this, eventually it leads into the collapse of both sides. Anna and Mark.
Yeah. It ending in, well, kind of double suicide.
Yeah.
In very much harkening back to well-loved love stories like Romeo and Juliet, which also takes the same note at the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot going on, maybe some more of the Lovecraftian elements going on that you might be very well versed in. Perhaps if now what we have left are the so-called quote-unquote ideal partners that are created through the earlier betrayal, then perhaps, the Helen, which is the innocent version of Anna, and Mr. Monster Mark, perhaps that's like falling into the same cycle all over again. So the loop repeats. Next to be betrayed will be Helen by the perfect Mark.
Mm.
But what do you think is the reason that the war starts in the end? Like, is it just about like what Karl Schipper of GDR said, something like, quote, that the GDR is in a permanent, or Germany is in a permanent state of becoming and never to be. So it's just about that. Kind of like the relationship once again.
I don't actually know. That's an interesting point. I must confess that I didn't think of that when I watched the film. I approached it simply from, and perhaps this is just like seeing how this is only one perspective, perhaps a bit boring answer, but I was only thinking about the ending through the point of view of Mark and Anna being metaphors for nation states, or political ideologies, communism versus capitalism. And from that point, yeah, this is an easy answer to land on, and therefore perhaps a bit lazy. But I just saw it as a since capitalism and communism can't, well, if we are to take Żuławski's film here, they can't, in the end, they can't mend their relationship, they can't exist together, and since they all, fate has linked them together so that, what happens to one affects the other, and the film coming out in the 80s when the Cold War and the nuclear war fears were all-time high, I took that was the ending is Żuławski's, well, in a form it's Żuławski expressing his anguish over what is going on in the world and how hopeless the times seems to be. In a way, it's Żuławski's cry for help, like, for heaven's sake, stop this lunacy before it's too late. And therefore, from my end, it was the nuclear war finally starting. We kinda, and this is, for me, this was somewhat kinda enforced by a possible reading of seeing the weird octopi monster thingy as some type of a new god. So since Anna would give birth to a god, that god would have omnipotent power to affect the world and affect the people around him. And because of that, Monster Mark alone could be a force strong enough to finally kind of bring up the nuclear war, to be kind of one horseman of the apocalypse, and that apocalypse then starting at the end of a film. It's not like the deepest and most complicated reading to take at the end, but that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah, something like that. For me, I took the monster just as some kind of a representation of the hardships that the main characters go through, and all the kind of the evil that Anna kind of holds as a result of her decisions and whatnot. Then it's all cramped into this octopus thing, or the baby that she is creating as a result of this alien sex.
Yeah, I carried a lot in my reading. I carried a lot into it from well, all of the things that this film has to say about God and what it has to say about religion.
Yeah.
So, like mentioned in the very beginning of the episode, this is a movie that is extremely critical of God, or the concept of God, and also religion. Like there's some really strong words to be had here. The biggest one being the to me God is a disease.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. I got, once again, from Perel something interesting about this. Like, she notes that some see affairs as a way to, quote, reach awakening through transgression. So then if you kind of rephrase that, these people might be reaching not just this awakening, but more to the point, reaching towards God. Anna visits the church, and she's whimpering at the iconography. And in possession, like you already stated, Heinrich connects the disease and suffering, apparently, to spirituality. Mark goes, for me, God is a disease. And Heinrich goes, that's why through the disease we can reach God.
I was thinking about the exact same line.
Yeah. So through disease we can reach God. Does it suggest that the suffering is necessary for transformation only? So Heinrich is really, really friendly towards God. So in this view, then you can say that, Anna's breakdown, it's part of a spiritual journey and her way of becoming something else.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to that scene, when it comes to the Anna puking milk upon tunnel possession scene, around that scene, Anna talks about the two sisters, Chance and Faith.
Is there what's that the reference to? Do you know exactly? Chance and Faith.
I actually don't know,
if anything,
the exact reference, because Chance and Faith being sisters it's I haven't ever been actually, or I haven't ever seen the trouble to actually source it down, like where it actually originates from. But it is a metaphor that I've seen kind of used repeatedly in Western storytelling. If I remember correctly, for example, Neil Gaiman raised this point used this metaphor in Sandman.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Chance and Fate being two sisters. It's a metaphor that I've come across.
Yeah, but something essentially that the Fate is, she loses her faith as part of the miscarriage. It's like a miscarriage of faith, miscarriage of Jesus, God, something like that. And then the Chance part is the evil version of her.
I took it in the sense that, seeing how it's following, or the whole shebang starts with, like you point out, by Anna visiting the church. So she tries to find some type of a connection to God, and then she leaves the church, and following that, she has a miscarriage at the subway. And to me, that miscarriage is an act of chance. Can happen, cannot happen. It's kind of like you can try to affect it, but at the end of the day, X number of miscarriages simply happened, simply out of a rotten luck, and there was nothing you could have done to prevent it.
No.
So to me, Anna's miscarriage is an act of chance, and as a result of the act of chance, she loses her faith.
Could it also be like she was building some tentacled monster here, and she miscarries that because she's still too much between worlds, and then later on she succeeds?
That could also be, or it could be that like keeping in with the tropes of possession movies. It could also be that the subway scene is the moment when she actually gets possessed. It's that act of possession that causes the miscarriage. Once again, it would also play with the religious imagery, like preceding that moment. Because once again, it would be like Anna has visited the church, and now Jesus doesn't protect her from the possession which causes the miscarriage. It's also one way how you can kind of see it, or see that scene, because we are never actually given like the complete airtight timeline when it is that Anna gets possessed, or when Anna gets pregnant with the octopi monster thingy. We don't get like it was at this date, at this time, at this place. We don't get those facts.
Yeah.
So because of that, yeah, like you're reading about what happens in the subway. Yeah, completely valid. Might be that was like the first attempt at having an octopi baby, and that's what Anna miscarried.
Yeah, part of herself not ready to let go of the old version of her.
Yeah. After all, like we don't know how long Mark has been or has been on his spy assignment before the film starts. It can be that like he has been out of home for 13 months. It can be that he has been away from home just like 7 or 9 months. At which point, it might be that Mark and Anna would have had a shot at having a second child. It could have been Mark's kid that Anna miscarried. Or it could have been, weird octopi monster thingy.
I guess you could also say that Anna discards the monogamous world, in its original meaning anyway, of one person for life, and not like one person at a time.
Kinda?
Perhaps, like, it goes from this hippie Heinrich pretty quickly to this adultery with the alien, and then the alien seems to be just to be more like Mark's interpretation of the level of betrayal. Whatever the case, we have a revamped monster Mark here, and it's definitely not giving a good picture of polyamory either. No.
I don't know. At the same time, like Anna seems to be fully satisfied by the octopied monster thingy.
Yeah.
So in that sense, perhaps the change was good for her.
Yeah. Well, everybody is following their desires. Both Mark and Anna, they're very lascivious, so they are not really following God in a sense, like that they are following their own desires, being very selfish. Yeah, but she is like a defector from monogamy, let's say, a defector from stability, defector from marriage, and the East Berliners who defected, they also usually lost their past lives and part of their families, and and they could never go back to what it once was. Even after the Berlin Wall fell, yeah, there was this invisible wall in their minds that called Mauer im Kopf, wall in the head, that started to, this catchphrase that started to gain traction after the wall had fallen because of these socioeconomic situations, etc. And just a long ass isolation from each other. These were just very different people by now. Even today, the East Germany remains, if not completely viewed differently, it's still economically lacking behind West Germany.
Okay. I must confess the black hole in my general knowledge. It's always it's more interesting time period. Like, from the outsider's point of view, the more interesting time period is when the wall exists than the time after the wall. Even though I would say most likely to Germans, the time after is actually the more meaningful and more important.
Yeah, the wall was built in 1961. It was the East Germans' mighty idea that by doing that they would separate their already faltering economy from the West. People would not be able to go so easily to the West anymore to get like the higher wages there and then come back home with their higher wages and then spend it on the eastern side and spend it on the like less costing items. So they thought that if they close down the economy in such a way, then they'll be able to raise the domestic product and produce everything internally instead of sharing any resources with the West. Well, of course, that drastically backfired then, and things took a direction for even worse over the years, as they were unable to, reorganize, modernize their economy. They've completely lost all control around 1989. In 1989 November, of course, the Berlin Wall fell. After several quasi-semi-dictators had their turn in trying to run East Germany, it just wasn't working out. And people were getting really pissed off because of how they were treated. And of course, even if it wasn't written in the newspaper, everybody knew that many Easterners had gone en masse in different ways to West by crossing the river by swimming in freezing temperatures and in many cases also dying by using the sewer systems to cross. Ultimately, the penalties for doing such acts were so severe that people really didn't do that much anymore. But yeah, it's just a time bomb waiting to happen if you try to control your people in this way and try to control their freedom of movement. So yeah, the wall fell, and it took only a couple of years after that, and the whole system fell. Writing was on the wall, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, to the Soviet establishment's defense, those were simpler times. Like, they didn't have internet back in the day.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see that few 100 tons of bricks and plaster is enough to stop the economy changing and stop entire ideologies. Like these days, that wouldn't, like post-internet, that just wouldn't work. Everybody would just be googling like what's happening in capitalism and ordering stuff out from Temu. So, but back in the day, I can kind of see how somebody could think that simply putting up one giant ass wall is enough to keep capitalism creeping in and money siphoning out.
Yeah, that was the theft of hope, worst gift of commies. But then, in kind of the same way, even though we have the internet now, there's a lot of people trying to control the narrative of the internet. And that's why we have certain presidents in the greatest country on earth at the moment as well.
Yeah, it's somehow it's the old saying that what the Soviet Union first, United States second. Granted, yeah. It's not the same bloody thing. One wall is not the the same thing as the second, but still.
No. All right. I guess I can't stall you anymore. Would it be the quickies?
Yeah, let's fire those ones. Also.
Oh, well, special mention for an actor goes to.
From my end, difficult question. It's a tough fight between Sam Neill and Isabella. I'm not even trying to pronounce the last name.
Adjani, I think.
Arjania. Both give really good performances in roles that are hard to pull off, but I guess I will go with Isabella Arjani here. That is solely because of the subway scene. Like, yeah. That's the one that seals the deal for Isabella. I don't know. Without that scene between Isabella and Sam Neill, I guess I would have to just use like a coin toss to be able to make my pick. But the subway scene here, it plays it to Isabella's court.
I think we definitely need Possession 2 sequel, where we have like Sam Neill returning. After all, he said that I call it the most extreme film I've ever made in every possible respect, and he asked us of things I wouldn't and couldn't go to now, and I think I only just escaped that film with my sanity barely intact. End quote. So, how about Sam Neill? Let's destroy the rest of the sanity. But on my part also, Isabel Adjani, I think she has more physical labor here in so many ways, so I'm gonna go with her. Well, did something work, Henrik, in Possession?
Quite a lot of things works in Possession. It's one of those movies where it's kind of a haymaker to see for the first time, especially if you have no idea what's in store for you. So there's a lot that works, and it's hard to actually say like one thing that you would highlight as a thing that really worked in Possession.
Yeah, how to put that into words? What worked? The so-called over-the-top acting, which in the context works surprisingly well. I don't feel like annoyed by it. I don't feel like that they are not giving it everything that they can. On the contrary, it's a very different type of approach. It works.
Yeah, it's that the acting is very melodramatic.
Yeah.
In here, but at the same time, it's not completely unrealistic either. It kind of exists in that extremely weird middle ground where it's like melodramatic to a point where it's almost laughable, but at the same time you can kind of just remember that what you haven't seen in real life out there in the streets of Helsinki and so forth, you haven't actually seen like entire scenes like the scenes in Possession here, but you have seen snippets of exactly as melodramatic and erratic behavior in real life. And because of that, you can't really say that, oh, that could never happen in anywhere, because you kind of have seen that happen also in real life.
Yeah, the performances keep escalating here. It starts like any movie, really. It's a couple having thoughts about breakup, but then all these physical convulsions and overacting and weirdness starts pretty quickly, then goes into stratosphere by the end. What worked, I guess the best way to put that is that you really don't know where this movie is gonna take you. You really don't. If you haven't read anything about the movie beforehand, you don't know where it's gonna drag you. You think it's gonna be about just a breakup subject with some weird acting, but then you have some tentacle octopus moments. I wouldn't say that it's a horror movie. It was sold as such because at least in some parts of the world, I heard in the US it was sold as like some video nasty. Well, I guess we can dump kind of horror sort of in that bracket at sometimes. So that's how they tried to sell that, and it was some kind of cut version with weird dubbing and things like that.
Yeah, I too have repeatedly run into Possession in different type of horror movie lists. It's sometimes in like disturbing and gross out movies lists, and sometimes it's like 25 best horror movies that you have never seen lists, and so forth and so forth. And I don't know, I'm kind of with you. I still see that Possession can count as a horror film.
Yeah.
It's not the movie that most likely the lists and the chatter around internet sells you. It's not that film. I'm still like hesitant. I can still say that Possession is a horror film, but it most definitely it's not the horror film that internet tells you it is.
Yeah, looking at the poster and the way that it's marketed, you can get really the different idea. It's just gonna be some lukewarm, run-of-the-mill horror film by the looks of things.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's not also the most disturbing movie that you will ever see. It has disturbing elements, for certain, yeah, and the themes are disturbing, but it's not like disturbing.
Yeah, it was definitely a film that pulled me in and kept in its grasp. But I remember watching it the first time. I didn't think I read anything about it. I just pressed play, and what I witnessed made me smile and laugh out loud even at some points. Although I was interested in the elements that it was presenting, and so I think I grasped great deal of the movie at the time. There were some moments which you really don't really understand, and you have to go back, and much of the scenes are still up to interpretation. But was there something that didn't work for you?
I actually don't know that either. Possession is a weird beast in the sense that when I first checked this out, I had quite strong repellent reaction to the movie at first. Like I was watching those early scenes, for example, in cafeteria when Mark is throwing the chairs around and chasing Anna and stuff like that. I was like, oh bother. Oh, here we go. And I was certain that that makes the list of stuff that I didn't work. And episode is going to be me griping about all that and demanding it to be removed.
Was this also the first time you saw this then, as a preparation for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then again, when as the movie progressed and we got closer to the end and the craziness really starts to seep in and we have the octopi sex scene and all of that stuff, I actually started to get more warmer towards the movie. And now that we have had an ample of time to prepare for this episode, and I have had the chance to watch the movie repeatedly and think more over it, I'm nowhere near as hostile towards the cafeteria scene or the acting. If something, now I find myself defending the acting in those scenes and being like, yeah, it feels really weird at first, but then when you think about it, you actually realize that you have seen similar type of behavior happening in real life, so it's not really unrealistic. So I don't actually know what to change about it, because apparently I just can't make my mind about the movie itself.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was looking at the cafeteria scene as well for the first time, and I was paying attention to things that, well, wasn't really the point of the whole thing, but I was paying attention to the extras in the background, that they are not paying any attention to what's going on around them when these lunatics are messing around. Well, yeah, the scene escalates to crescendo only when they start moving, and that's when the cooks and the restaurant staff start putting Mark on the floor. But yeah, I'm having the same view as you. What didn't work? Well, knowing what the movie is doing, essentially. Is there anything that particularly didn't work? Well, no.
Yeah.
Of course, there's parts like that mystery Mark, monster Mark. There could be something that could be done about that to like maybe drill it down a little bit more. Like, who is this guy? Maybe, perhaps. Depends on how you're interpreting the movie. So I don't know if anything really didn't work.
I know that the director is of the opinion that the film is not ready. it's not finished. He's not completely happy with the film, based on the fact that he kind of ran out of time. He didn't get the monster that he originally wanted. The monster that this film has is kind of like, oh, you wanted 5 weeks to design the monster, well, I can give you 2, so make the best damn thing that you can, type of compromise. And there were like at least one character who had to be dropped out of the movie completely because the director just wasn't happy with the actor and kicked him off from the movie mid-production. And that's something that has kind of bugged Żuławski to a point where he has stated in some interviews that he doesn't feel that the movie is finished. But not actually having the luxury of ever reading the script or seeing a version of the movie that would have all of the elements that Żuławski would have wanted into possession. Since I don't have a thing against which to compare the movie that I have, I can't really say that I agree with the director. Like when it comes to stuff that we lost, Żuławski has stated that had he been able to make the movie that he was visioning to make, the ending could have made more sense. And he believes that it would have been more clearer, the ending of the film. I don't know if the character of Abel would have somehow given some type of a explanation or hinted at what the double Sam Neill is supposed to be, or if there would have been like a dialogue scene where Abel is like, if there ever is an exact doppelganger of you, man, that is born out of your wife having weird sex with alien octopi, well, that is going to mean that the world is going to end in nuclear hellfire. Could have been that dialogue would have been there, but like since I haven't read the script, I don't actually know that like what that character would have done to the movie.
Right. Whew. Describe the film in a word.
For me, the word is mesmerizing. Especially towards the end when all the madness really starts to kick in. Like when we are at the flat finally, where Anna is hiding the monster, or the on the table sex scene. By God, I couldn't take my eyes off from the screen.
Yeah.
It might also something explaining that might of course also be my curated collection of rare Japanese cartoon films, of course, but mesmerizing is what I have.
Well, obviously flat and very dull and uninspiring. I will go with transfixing in a similar vein. So, Henrik, do you want to dabble on will this survive the test of time bullshit or jump to the next?
In my opinion, yeah. This one will stand the test of time. In a way, it kind of has already done it. So, like, it has already become a cult hit, which now is quite widespread thanks to internet. Like mentioned, like this is a movie that these days kind of show up in basically in so many lists already. But so it's kind of in the middle ground, perhaps. Like it's a cult film that is extremely well known these days, and because of that, yeah, this is. I would say that from Żuławski's filmography, this is the film that will stand the test of time most. This will be the most remembered film he's ever made.
Well, yeah. It has outlived the director, so it has survived quite well already. But would you be so kind, Henrik, and complete this sentence, which goes, you really know you are watching the film Possession when?
when perhaps you have met God and haven't even realized it. Did you kind of misquote the movie? The actual line is perhaps you met God and didn't even realize it. But, basically that.
Yeah.
That is the moment. That is the moment when you know that you are watching Possession.
Pretty much. But yeah, you really do know you're watching Possession when, well, Henrik, to Bill Clinton's benefit, at least the guy didn't have to go state that I did not have sexual relations.
With that octopus.
Or with that subway station. Did you like the film?
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Good, me too. Would you ever rewatch the film?
Yeah, I've already checked it out like 3 times now.
Are you gonna watch it even more now when we finish recording?
I will take a break from Possession, simply because at this point it's kind of like when we finally can this episode, I'm kind of like, oh, finally managed to nail that one. Thank God we finally made it. And then I'm gonna need a break from Possession, but I will most definitely check it out someday.
Would you share it at tea parties?
Absolutely, especially if there are emotionally vulnerable kids around.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Henrik, is there some movie of the week that you would recommend for us to watch together with the family? Some popcorn?
Yeah. Luke just came to me and asked, like, where do children come from? And I don't know what to actually, how to answer him. And then I just, take out Possession. I'm like, Luke, come here. This is going to give you all the answers. And then I'm going to be like, that's how children are made.
Would I rewatch the film? Yes, I would. I don't know, like Henrik, it's dangerous to watch these kind of films. I might just get inspired. Whatever that means for Henrik's future career.
Do you want to open up that statement more?
There are these handful of projects that I've recommended to you, but somehow they haven't materialized. I wonder why. Maybe someday.
Yeah. Just a pro tip, seeing how we have just been talking about octopod sex. Perhaps handful is not the best statement.
Now the most difficult question of the night, or is it? Would you recommend the film?
From my end, I absolutely, I full-heartedly joined the choir of they singing this movie's praises. Like today's chit chat has already proven, it's a film that actually has quite a lot going on in it. There's a lot of readings that you can take from this movie, and at the same time, it does have solid powerhouse performances from Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani. Like Żuławski has stated that the reason why Sam Neill was cast in this film was because he was still like trying to make his breakthrough, and he was cheap. And following Possession, I can really see why Sam Neill is not cheap today.
Yeah,
this is one of those. This is one of those career making performances for both of them.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, has some chops, and I would also praise Heinz Bennett in the role of Heinrich.
Yeah. Well, he is excellent, Heinrich. Heinrich just happens to be a character that it's really hard to actually say how you feel about Heinrich. He's so completely out there with his kind of pseudo spiritual babble. And as a character, he at first he starts as a actual threat to Sam Neill's mark. He's someone who is actively stealing his woman, and later on, towards the end of the movie, Heinrich becomes this sad joke of a character who nobody, not even Mark, takes seriously anymore, and then he gets his fucking head caved in a dirty bathroom. So, it's kind of hard to say how you feel about Heinrich, but Heinz Bennett makes an excellent performance as a character who you don't exactly know how you feel about.
Yeah, I just loved listening to his whatever new age hippie thinking that he wants to be so much friends with Sam Neill's character Mark, and I'm not sure if Mark is completely honest about what he's saying in the phone calls to the mom. Something like, "Yeah, I've seen the light, and I'm completely happy and whatever friends with my greatest enemy."
Yeah, but possession is something that I myself wasn't quite prepared for when I saw it for the first time. It's one of those movies I haven't quite seen anything like it. Like it's half Bloodborne, the video game Bloodborne. It's half anime, and it's like full-blown Lovecraft, and I absolutely love it. So, really strong recommendation from my end.
Yeah, also a super strong recommendation from my end. This is kind of like one of those, I don't know, one in a film watching career movies. You really don't know what to expect. It's something that you have never seen, and it actually manages to make quite a lot of sense in the end. It is not that hard of a movie to analyze in the end. We were thinking it would be completely impossible. Something in the vein of, oh boy, what's the director that we watched in the early days of the Flick Lab, the French guy. But anyway, it wasn't such of a challenge that you might think in the end, right? Do you have the similar feeling that it actually is quite understandable?
It is quite understandable. Like every film analysis that you find from the internet, it always starts like possession is impossible to understand, or you have just seen possession, you just can't make your head around the movie, and it most definitely is not that hard film to approach.
Yeah,
there are a lot of things that you kind of have to think about. And there is a lot of things that are not immediately clear to you after you've seen it. But also in no way is it an impossible movie to approach and an impossible movie to try to understand. Of course, there is like it's one of those movies where there is no just one clear-cut answer to every question. So it's a movie where everybody will, at the end of the day, will have their own reading of what it all meant. But that reading is something that is, in the end, is actually quite doable to come up with.
And I'm very happy that more like the horror movie audience that happened to come across this film and watched it, that many of them also seem to be really into the film, and they want to understand the film. Like there's a genuine one to kind of crack the code. Of course, there are also some people who are just surprising comments like it was actually a boring film, etc., etc. I don't think you can actually say that it's a boring film if you give it your full attention.
If you watch the entire thing and not just the first half hour, no.
Yeah. There are stages here, yeah.
Yeah. It takes some time for it to really get going, but once it does, once it gets going, after that it's not slowing down in any way. But yeah, just like in our previous, in our first episodes or our earlier episodes, once again I do have to admit to you, man, that once again, the Polacks managed to knock it out of the park.
Oh my gosh. We've watched a lot of good Polish director movies here. So, I think the last mystery of this episode is to crack the code of what does Heinrich's mother mean when she says that she found only Heinrich's body, but his soul was not there, and then asks, Heinrich is dead, isn't he?
To me, it was to start it from the the latter question. Heinrich's dead, isn't he? I took it as simply as sometimes you just get the feeling, like when something bad happens or has happened, but you don't yet know it yourself. You just get that feeling in your stomach, then you somehow just know what has happened. And I took it that's basically it. That's just what goes on with, like, it's the motherly know in that moment. The mom just knows what has happened, even though nobody has yet break her the news. When it comes to I saw Heinrich's body, but his soul wasn't there. You can kind of see it in a way that the mom actually believes the mystical mumbo jumbo that Heinrich is all about. That in that sense, she knows that Heinrich's spirit is not there because Heinrich is an enlightened individual, and to him the body is just a vessel, and now his energy is freely out there, and Heinrich isn't really dead. Or you can just see it in the way that that's just the mom trying to comfort herself, telling her that, death is just a stage and we will all live forever on in heaven or in some place else.
Or kind of like just a refusal to register the situation. He's gone.
Yeah, or that depends on your worldview. Do you believe that death is just that? It's just the end and nothingness? Or do you believe that there is a heaven someplace? Or do you believe that we are all energy and we will continue existing as energy in some form? After all, Einstein said that energy can't be destroyed. It just changes its form, and we know that human body hosts some amount of energy. So if you believe that there is some type of a greater energy within us or in us, in that sense, basically if we would be stricklers for Einstein's rule, in that sense, that energy would continue to exist after we have died in some type of a non-physical form, in some type of a more enlightened spiritual form or something like that. Kind of, it depends on what do you personally believe in and what is just mumbo jumbo to you.
I personally do believe, not surprisingly, Henrik, right, that brain is a powerful or like a gateway to experience all kinds of different experiences. There are people who take those experiences and somehow link these with organized religion, and yeah, that's fine. But not to get too deep into that. But that's not my approach. Of course, we don't know where everything is gonna lead. We don't know if there is some kind of plane that we don't know about yet, where thing like whatever soul would then be. Where does it go? Does it go anywhere? Yeah, sure. You can argue about that because we don't know.
There is only one way to really know for sure. And who are we to deny anyone from trying to take that journey and find those answers? Who we are even to deny that from ourselves? So how about it, Karri? Suicide today.
Oh, Henrik, that was maybe 57 episodes ago. I think we covered that topic already.
I don't remember what was 57 episodes ago, but I have the kitchen knives ready here.
Oh boy, Henrik, at least the one thing that defines the human experience, something that we all share, is the experience of pain. And I think the common shared value system goes such that everyone knows that you shouldn't put your hand on the stove because it hurts. So whatever it is that is the complete opposite of that, that's what we should put our energy towards to, not kitchen knives, Henrik.
Then again, there are people who actually don't register pain. Or to whom at least, the tolerance for pain is so hard that it would have to be like a really extreme form of pain before it actually registers with you. So I don't know if even the experience of pain is completely universal.
Yeah, that is true. There are always exceptions. It still doesn't say that there would be moral relativism. The intensity might depend on individual situation, but I think all of us want to have the best possible situation for us. And by extension, when we have the best possible situation for us, then we want the best possible situation for others, when we have energy to care about others.
Well, to take that notion and harken that point back to our Hellraiser episode, which we made fucking years ago, if we would actually take Patal's idea of a limit experience, in other words, pain so great that it actually forms into some type, it actually gives you some type of a feeling of an ecstasy. In that case, I don't know, are we now championing hurting others in the sense of, in order to provide them with this ecstasy indulging limit experience? So could that be actually acceptable? Hanging someone from the hooks and like boiling them slowly alive, just so like, are you enjoying the pain already?
Yeah, no doubt there is that kind of a limited experience that you can have if you reach a certain threshold of pain. We know that. But then where does it lead? There's no coming back. I think you will not spend, I think there's no coming back there with your whole body boiled in oil. So is that part of the optimal human experience? I think not.
Well, like I already said, there's only one way to find out.
Shit, Henrik. Give me the knife.
So join us on the next week's episode. It's going to be both an episode on a movie podcast and half of it will be a fucking cooking channel show.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm gonna cook with you. It's we have a safe distance now.
It's okay. It's going to be both of us slowly being grilled alive on an open flame. Are you enjoying the pain yet? Are you having the limit experience, man?
Okay, Henrik, well, see. We do take listener recommendations seriously. What was the next movie?
Oh, I actually don't have faintest idea. Should we finally check out that new Hellraiser film? Since we're now already talking about torturing ourselves, so
like if that's your pleasure, sure, yeah.
Are you now talking about self-torture or watching Hellraiser films? They might also be. They are not necessarily mutually exclusive, so
not necessarily.
Not necessarily.